The USGA just blinked. They officially paused the golf ball rollback until 2030. Many thought the distance debate was dead. It was not. The fight just moved to a much darker place. It landed right on Brian Rolapp's desk. A new rule is on the table, and it is not about changing the ball tomorrow. It is about total control. Rolapp sent a secret survey to the players. He wants to know if the PGA Tour should break away from the USGA and create its own equipment rules. This is not just a meeting. This is a direct threat to split the sport into two completely different games. The amateurs will play one way, and the professionals will play another. The locker room is reacting, and anger is boiling over. Three massive names are drawing a hard line in the sand against this power grab. They see this as a trap. If the tour creates its own rules, the history of the game is gone. But the real danger is not what this new rule does to the courses. The real danger is what it does to the players' careers behind closed doors. Players know that once the tour takes full control of the equipment, their leverage disappears. They are looking at a future where their stats, their records, and their livelihoods are manipulated for television ratings. The pressure is high because the player board is ready to vote this down. I honestly believe the tour needs to back off before they ruin the game, but do you agree they are overstepping? Let me know below and subscribe for more real golf news. We will break down exactly what Rolapp is trying to pull off. We will look at the exact mechanics of this survey and why it has the entire golf world on edge. To understand the anger, you have to look at the actual questions on that survey. Rolapp is not just asking about driving distance. He is asking if the PGA Tour should completely separate its equipment regulations from the USGA. Think about what that actually means for the sport. For decades, one set of rules governed everyone from the weekend hacker to the world number one. This proposal destroys that unity. The corporate logic seems simple on the surface. Shorter drives create shorter courses. Shorter courses guarantee more drama on Sunday afternoons. That drama equals higher television ratings and much bigger sponsorship checks. Rolapp knows the modern power game is incredibly entertaining, but he also knows the broadcast executives demand tight leaderboards. By taking control of the ball, the tour controls the final product. Executives see a brilliant business strategy to protect their broadcast deals. They completely forgot to ask the people actually hitting the shots. Think about the major championships, the Masters, the US Open, the British Open. These events are not run by the PGA Tour. They are run by Augusta National, the USGA, and the R&A. If the PGA Tour mandates a specific rolled-back golf ball for its regular events, what happens at the majors? Do the players have to switch balls every week? Do they have to carry two different bags of golf balls and completely change their yardage books? The logistical headache is massive, and the players are just starting to realize the full scope of the problem. Then there is the equipment itself. The manufacturers are caught in the middle. Developing a completely new golf ball specifically for the PGA Tour costs tens of millions of dollars in research and development. Who actually pays for that? The players know that in the end, those costs get passed down. It could mean reduced purses, lower appearance fees, or cuts to the player impact program. The financial implications are a disaster waiting to happen. The money issues are bad enough to cause a revolt. The hidden details inside the survey regarding player endorsements are what actually triggered the first major walkout. Manufacturers pay players to use their gear. If the tour forces a new ball, the existing endorsement contracts become void. The players would have to renegotiate everything. The tour could potentially step in and dictate the terms of those new deals. This removes millions of dollars of outside income from the players' pockets and puts it under the control of the tour management. The athletes realized they were not just voting on a piece of equipment. They were voting on their own financial independence. This realization brought the first major voice of opposition to the surface. It came from a player who actually agreed with the original premise of rolling the ball back. For years, this superstar argued that the equipment was going too far. He watched classic golf courses become obsolete. He saw par fives turn into easy birdie opportunities. He wanted the game to test the players again. Yet, when Rolapp proposed this new tour-specific rule, this exact same player became the loudest critic in the room. He spent years asking for a shorter ball. Now, he is the one fighting to stop the very rule he once supported. That player is Rory McIlroy. The irony is thick, but the logic is sound. Rory wants the USGA to govern the game. He believes in a single set of rules for everyone. If the PGA Tour creates its own ball, the sport fractures. Rory looks at the history of golf and sees a game built on a unified foundation. Bifurcation destroys that foundation. He knows that if the pros play a different game than the fans, the connection between the tour and the grassroots level is severed forever. Rory has not been quiet about this. In recent press conferences, he took direct swipes at the tour's leadership. He made it clear that he refuses to play under a fractured rulebook. He understands that once the tour separates from the USGA, US Open, the governing bodies lose their authority. The tour becomes a rogue entity. Rory is using his massive platform to rally the traditionalists. He is telling the player board that giving up the USGA rulebook is a mistake they can never undo. He also worries about the global game. The PGA Tour is just one part of professional golf. The DP World Tour, the Asian Tour, and the Japan Golf Tour all follow the USGA rules. If the PGA Tour breaks away, it creates a massive headache for international scheduling and global ranking systems. Rory's public defiance was loud, but it was just the opening act. The real explosion happened behind closed doors with the game's most famous veteran. While Rory fought for the soul of the sport, another faction was fighting for pure player power. The legacy players, the guys who built the modern tour, were not interested in philosophical debates about golf course architecture. They cared about control. They saw Rollapp's survey as a massive overreach. They viewed it as management trying to dictate their physical tools without their consent. This tension finally boiled over at a recent golf summit. The doors were closed. The media was locked out. Inside that room, Phil Mickelson took the floor. Phil is not known for holding back, and this was no exception. He delivered an explosive speech that reportedly left the tour executives completely stunned. Phil did not just complain about the ball. He attacked the entire governance structure. He laid out exactly how this survey was a backdoor attempt to strip the players of their agency. Phil's words echoed through the room, turning quiet frustration into a unified demand for absolute control over their own careers. Phil argued that the players are the product. Without them, the tour has no value. If management can unilaterally change the equipment to manipulate the television product, the players are reduced to mere actors in a scripted show. He demanded that the player board reject the survey entirely. He wanted a binding agreement that no equipment changes could happen without a supermajority vote from the players themselves. The veterans in the room agreed. They have been through too many corporate takeovers and hostile boardroom battles. They recognized the tactics. Rolapp was trying to divide the locker room by appealing to the broadcast partners. Phil saw right through it. He rallied the older guys, the guys with the most experience and the most leverage, to stand firm. They told management that if they pushed this rule through, they would face a united front of the game's biggest names. Phil reminded everyone of the LIV golf situation. The players already fought one massive battle for their freedom and their financial rights. They are not going to let the PGA Tour management take those rights away through a simple equipment rule change. The veterans drew their line in the sand, but the final blow to the survey came from the very top of the current world rankings. The modern game is built on speed. The current crop of players has optimized their swings for maximum launch angle and minimum spin. They hit the ball higher and farther than any generation in history. Their entire competitive advantage is based on this physics profile. If you introduce a ball that flies lower and spins more, you completely change the skill set required to win. You neutralize their greatest weapon. This is where Scottie Scheffler and the top 10 players stepped in. Scottie represents the modern power game. He and his peers understood that a tour-specific rollback would directly hurt their performance. They do not care about the historical purity of the game as much as they care about the competitive integrity of their own careers. They spent months perfecting their swings for the current equipment. Changing the rules now is like changing the dimensions of a basketball court in the middle of the playoffs. Scottie and the top players realized their physical dominance was under direct attack, and they used their collective power to shut the door. The world number one does not need to give explosive speeches to make his point. His influence is quiet but absolute. Scottie and his camp worked the room during the player board meetings. They laid out the technical data. They showed how a restricted ball would alter approach shots, change green complexes, and ruin the strategic balance of the courses they play every week. They proved that this was not about entertainment. It was about fundamentally altering the athletic test. Think about a standard par 5 on the PGA Tour. Today, the top players can reach it in 2 shots with a mid-iron, giving them a massive advantage over the rest of the field. If the ball is rolled back, that same hole requires a driver and a long fairway wood or hybrid. Suddenly, The advantage shifts from the best ball strikers to the best putters and wedge players. The game changes completely. The players who spent 10 years building their swings to maximize distance would see their hard work neutralized overnight. Scotty made it very clear to the board that this was an unacceptable risk to their competitive fairness. The player board listened. The top players made it clear that they would not accept a compromised product. They threatened to withhold their appearances from key tour events if the survey results were ignored. This is the ultimate leverage. The tour needs its stars to draw crowds and sell tickets. If Scotty, Rory, and the rest of the top 10 decide to sit out, the broadcast partners will panic. The sponsors will pull their money. The entire financial model of the tour would collapse. The players had delivered their final verdict, but the real shock came when the actual survey results were tallied and sent to the executive board. This is where the situation reached a total gridlock. The results from the player survey came back, and they were a landslide rejection. Over 80% of the players voted against the tour creating its own equipment rules. The mandate was clear. The locker room absolutely refused to accept bifurcation. Rolapp was now boxed in. He had proposed the idea, but his own workforce had voted it down in record numbers. The executive team is now facing a massive dilemma. If they ignore the survey and force the rule anyway, they risk a player strike. The top stars will simply refuse to play. The tour will be left with a B-list field, and the television ratings will tank. On the other hand, if they accept the survey results and drop the idea, they lose the leverage they were trying to build with the broadcast partners. They lose the ability to control the course setups and guarantee the tight leaderboards the networks demand. The executives are trapped between a player revolt and a broadcast meltdown, and neither side is willing to blink first. The logistical nightmare is also becoming a reality. The major championships have already signaled their stance. Augusta National and the USGA have privately informed the PGA Tour that they will not adopt any tour-specific ball. They will stick to the USGA rules. This means if the tour tries to force a new ball, the players will have to switch equipment every single week. The manufacturers have already stated they will not produce two different tour-level balls just to satisfy a corporate experiment. The supply chain simply cannot handle it. Sponsors are getting nervous. The equipment companies are the lifeblood of the tour's outside revenue. If the tour forces a rule that voids their contracts and costs them millions in research and development, they will fight back. They could reduce their sponsorship payouts. They could pull their branding from the tournaments. The financial ecosystem of professional golf is deeply interconnected, and pulling one thread threatens to unravel the whole sweater. The financial threats are severe, but the ultimate damage is being done to the very reputation of the sport itself. The media fallout has been brutal. Golf journalists are tearing the tour apart for trying to fracture the game. The fans are confused and angry. They tune in to watch the best players in the world compete under the same rules they play with on the weekends. When they find out the pros might be playing a different ball, the connection is broken. The illusion of the sport is shattered. The traditionalists are furious at the tour for abandoning the USGA. The modern fans are angry at the idea of restricting the distance and ruining the excitement. Rolapp wanted to solve a problem that did not really exist. The distance debate was largely a media creation. The USGA had already paused the rollback until 2030 to study it further. There was no immediate crisis. By rushing in and proposing a radical split, the tour created a massive crisis where there was none. They united the players against them. They alienated the majors. They spooked the sponsors. They confused the fans. This self-inflicted wound has left the tour paralyzed, forcing a complete rethinking of how the game will be governed for the next decade. The player board is now drafting a formal response. They are demanding a binding agreement that locks in the current USGA rules for at least the next 5 years. They want it in writing that the tour cannot unilaterally change the equipment specifications. They are using the leverage from the survey rejection to secure their own futures. Rolapp is forced to negotiate from a position of weakness. He tried to assert dominance, and the players simply outvoted him. The future of professional golf is now in a state of deep uncertainty. The USGA and the R&A are watching closely. They see the tour trying to steal their authority, and they are preparing to defend their jurisdiction. The relationship between the governing bodies and the tour is more fractured than it has been in 50 years. The trust is gone. Every decision regarding the rules of golf will now be a battlefield. The war over the golf ball is no longer about distance. It is about who actually owns the sport, and the players have just claimed their territory. We will see how this plays out over the next few months. The tour cannot force this rule without destroying its own product. The players have made their stance perfectly clear. The majors are standing firm. The manufacturers are refusing to comply. The gridlock is absolute. Brian Rolapp wanted to take control of the game's future. Instead, he accidentally united the entire locker room against him. The next time you watch a PGA Tour event, look closely at the players. They are not just competing against each other. They are fighting for the right to play the game the way it was meant to be played. They are fighting for their financial independence. They are fighting for the integrity of their records. The ball rollback might be paused until 2030, but the battle for the soul of golf is happening right now, and the players are winning.